Today I want to update you on the next stage of this momentous medical initiative. It's called Operation Warp Speed. That means big and it means fast. A massive scientific, industrial, and logistical endeavor unlike anything our country has seen since the Manhattan Project. Today my administration released our detailed national vaccine distribution plan. And that includes a plan to ensure that we swiftly deliver the vaccine directly to America's senior citizens in nursing homes, and it's all set. We have our military lined up. Everybody's lined up. You really could say that nobody's seen anything like we're doing, whether it's ventilators or testing. Nobody's seen anything like we're doing now within our country since the Second World War. Incredible. To get the vaccine into the hands of American people, we're fully mobilizing the awesome power of American industry and also our military. And we'll be able to distribute at least 100 million vaccine doses by the end of 2020, and a large number much sooner than that. This is the largest, fastest, and most advanced vaccine distribution effort in American history.
Just back to the 2016 elections, I would rather my cat, and Roscoe is pretty cool, but I would rather my cat be president than Hillary Clinton. And I actually mean that. We would be better without a president at all than having someone like her. And beyond even right and left, I've never been one to believe in either side of things for quite some time. But I did at one point deeply believe in the Constitution. But I feel like I've now been shown that it's really not about following governments. It's not about following systems. Nowhere did Jesus say to pledge the allegiance to a flag. All the while, you guys should know it. Some of God's greatest, most protective and loved men, like Daniel, put in a lion's den. Why? Because he disobeyed the government. Jesus was slain in part for his own forms of civil disobedience, right? For calling the elders of his own faith a brood of vipers and worse. So let's be clear. At some point, civil disobedience will be necessary as a part of our getting through all this. We are ultimately going to have to say no to something that our government says yes to, and that is a mark that will enable us to buy or sell. Now, what in the world makes you think that the enemy plays fair? That the enemy wouldn't attach it to something like CV-19 papers or some such thing? He would. And what's worrisome to me is that so many people, I'm not even worried about the left, all right? I'm not even worried about people who don't have ears to hear. So many people, however, who call themselves believers are just blindly listening to a man and relying on the outcome of elections and pointing to a political side as the enemy rather than digging in and attempting to hear the voice of your Creator. And that is a problem. And that is exactly where they want you and why they have gone to all the trouble of making Trump look like an outsider. It had to be believable, and it is, you know? So in order to accept that pretty big pill, right, to swallow for a lot of people, you have to basically accept that our entire history, everything we were taught as truth in school, that was painted to serve the controllers, not us. They had to tell us about the truth of our founding rather than looking at the fact that Washington, D.C. government, the architecture itself, it was seeded by Rome. And the pagan gods and Egyptian temples all over D.C. are there to prove it to you. Did they tell you that in school? No. The pyramids on the streets, the upside down 5-pointed stars, the all-seeing eye at the top of the pyramid. Is the White House at the top? No. A temple. Right? A temple whose stained glass says within it, order out of chaos. This is the ultimate destiny of the United States, and to those who are truly in power, not the politicians. Come on, guys. Let's quit falling for this. They're just puppets, and they have been for a very long time. But back to Trump for just a moment. By far, my least favorite of all his orders includes the state of emergency for CV-19 that was engaged when? On Friday the 13th. Now, how many of you realize the origins of the dread behind Friday the 13th? That it is linked to the crucifixion of Jesus. Philip Stevens Jr., renowned anthropologist, he studies the origin of cultures and superstitions. He says the Western culture of fear around Friday the 13th originates from the biblical recalling of Jesus' Last Supper and crucifixion, in which there were 13 individuals present in the upper room on the 13th of Nisan, Thursday, the night right before his death on Friday. And that's the date they choose to start the CV-19 madness? Really? Really? That, as an aside, let me take a second to point out something very interesting here, that this CV strain, this event, and the dreams and visions that are showing up to point what's coming as a result seem to me to be perfectly reflected in part of Revelation chapter 6 in what's often called the four horses of the apocalypse. Now, the description and the events associated with the four horses parallels what Jesus warned about in Revelation 24 regarding the beginnings of sorrows that must happen before he returns. Four horse events describe the unveiling of physical trials that will come over the people of the entire earth. They are the events that are brought in by spiritual tactics of the enemy, include the second red horse to, quote, take away peace from the earth and to make men slay one another. Don't know about you, but that sounds even more like civil WAR to me than just normal WAR. Deep inflation to the point of making food unaffordable. Printing money out of nothing will do that. Check. There were horses relating to famine as well as pestilence. Now remember, at the opening scene of the four horses, the rider on the first white horse was given a crown and had a bow. Now, this is not Jesus who comes later on, also who's on a horse and holding an iron scepter with King of Kings and Lord of Lords written on his robe. But this white horse indicates the spiritual beginnings of the unfolding of the short time of rule of the Antichrist over the people on the earth. Now, however, it is terribly interesting to me that this first rider was given a crown and a bow, but had no arrows. Now, CV-19 and the word corona, can't say it, actually translates from Latin as the word crown. Scripture says that the rider on the first white horse, quote, he that sat on him and had a bow and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Now, have we ever seen more spiritual conquering involved on a global scale than with this CV strain? This event that literally translates as the word crown, to those paying attention, it's evident that this event can absolutely result in the fulfillment of the other horses: financial collapse, great inflation, famine, pestilence, which actually only means mass death. And again, this is even considering that the rider with the bow has no arrows. Interesting. Sounds a whole lot like the first spiritual event of the white horse. Doesn't even have to kill directly, but that it will be used to conquer and lead the other three horses even without having physical arrows. Wow. Doesn't even have to kill in order to be used ultimately to conquer, which is the stated goal of the first white horse. Now, on the topic of killing, when you consider that Trump too has openly supported fast-tracking the untested for human health consequences, FIVEG.
The race to 5G is a race America must win, and it's a race, frankly, that our great companies are now involved in. We've given them the incentive they need. It's a race that we will win.
My question for you, particularly Mr. Gillen and Mr. Berry, how much money has the industry committed to supporting additional independent research? And we're talking about research on the biological effects of this new technology.
There are no industry-backed studies, to my knowledge, right now.
So essentially, the answer to my question, how much money? Zero.
I can certainly follow up with you, Senator. To my knowledge, there's no active studies being backed by industry today.
So there really is no research ongoing. We're kind of flying blind here, so far as health and safety is concerned. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This untested FIVEG that he specifically moved to deregulate and fast-track and push into rural areas at the exact same time when CV-19 was taking off, so most can't even see all the new infrastructure going up, and then to put the leaders of the various three-letter agencies in charge of ensuring its deployment. Another military term.
It must also cover every community, and they must be deployed as soon as possible.
I just wanted to maybe wake some of you up, right? Like, last call, guys. This is really the last call. You know, they don't have blood red MAGA hats for no reason. All they had to do to get most of people to just drink the hopium is to make him look like an outsider. That's why they've done it. He had to look like an outsider. They had to have one huge network dedicated to making him not look like one who's in on it, and that's all it took. That's all it took. And it's a little disheartening because Jesus told us, do not be deceived. The biggest warning about the end days was, do not be deceived, for many will come in my name. That's not just the Antichrist. That is people who pretend to be walking the way, but who aren't. They're everywhere. And sadly, a lot of them are going to be very, very confused and lose a lot of faith when everything that Q promised them didn't come to fruition. And I have no plans here to try to convince the believers of CNN the truth, because they just simply don't have the ears to hear and don't think that I do not understand the weapon for chaos that certain factions of the extreme left have become. They have been socially conditioned, and in some cases even paid, to become a tool of destruction for a Marxist takeover. Yeah, I know. Many of them are literally out of their right minds. But that doesn't automatically mean the only other option is the true way that God stands for. Don't let the insanity of the left trick you into believing that the other path is something he is behind or that will turn this place around. But for those of you who are supposed to understand the times that we're in, that are falling down on the job really hard, they're just watching their sports with their cardboard cutouts in the stands, pretending everything's going to go back to normal on, November 4th, when that is not the plan. And I want you to wake up, not to listen to me, not to listen to your government or to any man, but to turn back to your first love, to turn back to your Creator, to know his voice intimately. My sheep know my voice. Do you know his voice? Because it's time that you do. And this isn't a fun one to make, but when I saw that MAGA 5th level Church of Satan, anyway, just had to share this because